Well, good day to everyone. Welcome to the 2024 International Conference, Call to Action to Change Child Welfare. We're very delighted to have four panelists, spectacular people, brilliant minds from around the world who are going to talk to us about the importance of relationships in child welfare. And so with no further ado, I am going to turn it over to Carmen.
Hi everyone. I'm Carmen and from London, in Camden. I'm a person with lived experience, and so I have experience with the child protection process and social service, and I'm also sorry a bit long because I'm doing many different things. So doing parent advocacy, and I run family advisory board for our local authority, and I'm also the peer research with YVS University on family group conference and parental advocacy project. So I'm in different places, in between different places. So yeah, and relationship and relational activism is the core value for me with my work with different parties. Yes, that's me. Thank you. And Tim?
Well, yeah, I worked with met Carmen about 10 years ago in Camden, near Camden Lock. Actually, if any of you internationally know that, have been to the UK, you might have been to the King's Cross area or the Camden area. Camden's often looked on as being quite a sort of go-ahead, trendy place, but we did meet near Camden Lock, but we met in a dusty old hall. Well, you always get defensive when I say dusty, because we've got nostalgic appreciation for that venue because that's the first time we met. We met when I was a social worker, and Carmen was a person with lived experience, not to pigeonhole you, but I guess in general terms, and the relationships developed from there. Worked in Camden for a long time, and I've just recently taken on a new job in East Sussex, which is where I live as principal social worker, which is by the beach on the coast. So it's a little bit away from London. Yeah, and I could throw to two good people on this call. Elizabeth, did you want to go next?
Welcome, everybody. Elizabeth, or Liz, for me. And I say I'm from Philadelphia. I lived in Philadelphia for almost 30 years, but I've actually moved towards the west coast of the United States, near Salt Lake City, Park City, Utah, 3 months ago. So I'm learning to say where I live, which is now different than where I'm from. And I'm thrilled to be here. I think this is going to be a fun conversation. Like Carmen and Tim and Raven have been involved in some capacity with this thing we call social service work for most of my lifetime, because my parents also did this work. I'm a social worker first and foremost, and what I do now is work with Pale Blue Dot, and we are the sort of home for family finding and family seeing and a bunch of other wonderful things that really are centered in something maybe we've forgotten a little bit, which is that relationships build health in the world. And so maybe we'll talk a little bit about that today. And I met Raven, I'm not sure how many years ago now. It feels like a lot of years, because Raven does something really, really cool. And also Raven works with my daughter. So we have multiple threads of relationships, and I'm really excited to get to do something with Raven today. Actually, that's my highlight today. So Raven, I'll hand it to you to say hello.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate you. So my name is Raven. I am Southern Ontario based in Canada, so I live just outside Toronto. I've had lived experience in Ontario's foster care system, and now I work in a youth advocacy position for almost just over 10 years now. Canada and US based. I work under HERO primarily, and I walk alongside youth as they create connections of their own. We really like to empower and instill belonging, connection, community, relationship. Yeah, that's a bit about me.
I found, sorry, can I jump in? I found it, this is, you are the US version of me and Tim Raven. So we both have lived experience, but I'm in the children's service, and then I met Tim, and we're doing all this work together, and it's for almost 10 years. What? Not almost. We're over 10 years, and so it's like you and Elizabeth. We're the
I think
different
Raven said
duo.
she was in. Are you in Canada, Raven? Yeah.
I am, yeah, just outside Toronto.
Okay. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah.
so it's interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Carmen, like I've watched you and Tim over the years, and I'm curious because the hope for this conversation is to talk about relationships. I'm curious when you think about the introduction of lived experience.
Mm.
I just wonder for you, and Raven, I'd be curious for you too, and Tim as well, but I wonder how that ties in for you, thinking about the things kind of in your heart or in your soul, right? Because we've professionalized this world so intensively.
Yeah.
But I think the four of us can probably relate deeply around the things we know in our heart or our soul about why most of the focus of our day-to-day is on relationships and why they matter. Will you say something about that, Carmen, just in relation to your experiences over the years?
I think everyone have lived experience of everything, of different things. And I think I was lucky enough to have experience with social service. Well, before I would say unlucky that I have been involved, but now when I think back to do reflections, I actually glad every experience I have, if I don't have that experience, and I wouldn't change my life and wouldn't have it brought me to this path and do what I'm doing. And I cannot think this is my destiny. Do you understand? And so actually it's like, okay, this is some good things out of the very bad experience, but help me to understand what social work is, and which I've never touched in this side of world. So, and working with Tim, and it also helped me to understand how social workers see things, what is how social work runs, how the system look like, and what they are concerning, and how different with me. And I find it really encouraging that because I learned so much, and I can also use my experience into change, help support in make change. We are just so small, but but everyone like us to do it together and could make this wheel to turn. So it's really important. Yeah, the life experiences is a good thing. Life experience of everything or every other situation is a good thing, because it helps us to learn, to understand, yeah. So I'm always very reflective, and I always step back. So okay, let me know what's going on, what I learned from this situation, whether it's good or bad, yeah. Relationship, yes, relations. It brought to slate like this moment we meeting, we start the conversation, two people start the conversation. This communication is the beginning of our relationship. So it is important, I think, especially in social work. I mean, in everyday, like for us as well, this communication we have with ourselves. Do we have a relationship with ourselves? Do we know ourselves? So, yeah, we could talk more deeply, but briefly, what I will is like this. Yeah.
I love that. It makes me think of, I don't know why, but I think all the time about what the words actually mean and social work. When I think of the word social, I actually relate that to relational, which is relationship work.
Yeah.
And it's it's nice to remind ourselves what we're actually doing here.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree with you, Carmen. It's right. I mean, we've just started our relationship this morning.
exactly. And then how we cultivate these relationships, it depends on what our mindset, what our attitude. So if you apply in social work, I would say how the social worker have this relationship with the person. What mindset you're going into this relationship? You're serving this person. You want just official transactional relationship with this person, or you go in as a social worker. Oh no, I have to support this person. I need to know this person, and because if I know what they need, and then I could do my job better. I can provide the service. But if you go in just, oh, this is just my job, I just give you minimal of the relationship, the effort, then you will just get the minimal outcome. That's what I see. Yeah.
I mean, I really credit you with staying open, because it's there. You did overcome some really difficult things, and actually, I know you've talked about it in other contexts that you did feel sharply a system and a sort of a helping response that wasn't there at the beginning, and so to have overcome that and stayed open and want to stay connected to social work and to try to help, I think is really impressive and very generous. And it's like when we do that thing sometimes, don't we? We call it relational job titles, where you ask a group of social workers. Usually we do it with, don't we? But sometimes people with lived experience, a mix of lived and learned experience as well. But we ask them to consider what would be their relational job title if they're feeling hopeful, and all kinds of things they say. I think the ones the other day were like compassion concierge, I think was one, or goddess of empath, somebody said, or somebody just said tea and biscuits, because that's the mode that they wanted to be in with the other person. But as Elizabeth said, like the clues in the title really in it with social work. I mean, the fact that we have to sort of try to reimagine the words sometimes to bring a bit of hope back in shows that in some ways it's there's some parts of the system where there isn't enough hope. Yeah.
I'm curious what but I love the thing that you just shared, Tim, about people creating their sort of relational title. And I'm curious, like, I don't know why, but whenever I get to spend time with Raven, I always think about the wisdom we miss, which comes from in the work that I do and the work that Raven does a lot of time from young people. Because we tend to box people into like people doing social work and people on the receiving end, as you said, Carmen. And I think there's a mistake in that, because it separates us rather than pulls us together, just as a group of people who can love each other and care about each other. And Raven, I'm just curious, because I know I'm thinking about this summer, actually, you spent a significant amount of time with a few groups of young people. And I'm just wondering how that played out for you, at least from your perspective, in terms of being able to come together just as people who mutually care and it wouldn't be tea and biscuits in Canada. Maybe it would be, I don't know what it would be, Raven, Timmy's, Timbits, and some good coffee from Tim Hortons, maybe. I'm just curious what you think about how that lands for young people that you get to hang with and kind of create these communities.
I thank you, Liz. I would say it's primarily about seeing the human in each other. With the lived experience piece, you have this lived experience, and it might not be the exact same situations, but they're the same feelings, they're the same undertone. You have kind of this same hurt or experience. And when you see the human in others, you just kind of allow for connection and community to thrive. It's a want to see them do better. It's a recognizing their worth and then walking alongside them as they recognize their own. It's bringing them back to themselves, saying, hey, I see you. And I think that's different than within systems. I think sometimes systems offer disconnect under kind of like a guise of safety. And safety is coming back to the village, and it's having those people walk alongside you while you do so.
I think I would call this emotional advantage. That's because we connect, we share the similar experience. So it's you guys just the same life, maybe. Yeah, we just we touch, you know. And I also think it's very love driven. What we're doing is love driven, isn't it? If you don't have a heart, and you can't really do it. Yeah.
I enjoyed that. I liked the cultural. I thought, Raven, what you said there about coming back to the village is really, really beautiful. And I like that. You know, I mentioned tea and biscuits, and then it's something different, and people's lived experiences are different. And I think even being, you know, compassionate and curious is sometimes there's an extra thing about just really like being prepared to be in the space and listen. But I was thinking about, I just stuck in my head because I mentioned that I was down by the seaside, by the coast, by the shore, and there's an Irish poet called Seamus Heaney, and he tells this story of you know, every couple of years they would go to on a seaside holiday, and people would other kids would get a bucket and spade. Like that would be a typical thing. Would that be like what you'd have in? Would you have a bucket and spade? Is that a thing? This is like the iconic. This is really niche, and it's sorry, but the thing he tells his story, Seamus Heaney, about how his mum gave him a wooden spoon, or while they were by the coast, she bought him a wooden spoon. She didn't buy him a bucket and spade, and that was because they could use the wooden spoon when he got home, and he uses this as an example of how people experiences are different. And actually, he was really happy with his wooden spoon, and it was quite effective on the beach. Yeah.
It makes me think too that sometimes we want to bring something to a new group or a new community or an old community that relates us, right? So if we all bring a bucket and spade, then we've got that in common. But I wonder if he were sitting here and we asked, was he welcomed in a different way because he had something different? And how often that's such an incredible gift in families, in networks, communities, but we don't tell the story that way professionally or as I always use the air quotes when I say the word system, because of course systems are just people, right? That there's not like some big behemoth in the sky somewhere. It's just people. But we tell the story differently. Oh, this person's not brought their bucket and spade, so you know, they don't fit the same way. Well, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe all, you know, I used to do work with families quite often who were all bringing different things. And sometimes together we had to work to understand what the gifts were. But that's relational activism work. I think that's family finding and family seeing work. I think that's hero work. I think that's asset-based community development work. Since you mentioned Ireland, Tim, is, you know, what do all these different people bring, including their common experiences and just as people. And I'm kind of tuning into that point because the professional people who might be welcomed into the village briefly to help should be participating in that way also, right? Shoulder to shoulder, side by side, rather than this sort of top-down approach that we sometimes have in systems. And I think, I mean, I'm curious what the three of you's perspective is on this, but I think often about, I started in sort of a case management role very early in my career, right? As I was finishing college. And I will never forget going into my graduate work, one of my very first days in school, having a professor, it was my ethics professor, ironically, talking to this group of sort of fresh new social workers about boundaries, about limits, about walls, about, you know, this isn't about loving your clients, it's not, right? Including the language of your clients, right? There's just all these barriers that go up immediately. And that was the lesson. And I remember sitting there thinking, well, that doesn't feel consistent with the word social work or relational health or care, right? Child care, the language of child welfare even, right? This conference. Is that really what it is? Are we really caring for people's health? Are we really worried and supporting people's welfare? Or are we managing disease and the problems that we created? And I just remember thinking, oh, what a sort of disjointed experience to be coming into this, because I love to be with people and just kind of try to love people. And I'm being told that that's not what to do. And I think I'm hearing the three of you say you would agree that that's not what to do. That's not what social work really is. So I'm just curious if other folks have had an experience like that, where there's maybe a disconnect between what you know and what you were told.
I think social worker should always be reflect why they come into the profession. What do they want? If you think you are superior than other people, I advise you better quit your job. Because you're supporting people in crisis. You have empathy. Your missions, ambitions is driven by this empathy and love, supposedly, yeah. So I don't know what other people's motive when they come into the profession. But if you truly have this, and then I think you will be naturally, you will accept the people. People are different. And you should be happy to see the diversity of people. And then it also helped you to learn that's why we call practice, isn't it? I always explain to my son why they call GP practice, why they because they still learning. Everyone's different, everyone's symptom is different, and they don't have all the solutions, and they keep learning. Yeah. In social work, I think it's just the same. You can't use one model and fix all problems, and that's why we have so many different approach models and practice. Whatever is combining, like Chinese medicine, they have this many different drawer. Oh, you got this symptom, but mixed with the other symptom, they have 5 different herbs to put in one solution for you. Yeah, so I think, and also social work need to be innovative, think out of the box. Yeah, you got all this, you learn from school, but in practice it's different. These are people, things are happen differently. You can't just say, I learned this from school, I learned this from uni, therefore I have followed this, I must. There's no must, there's no should. That is just right. You just need to find something that's right for this problem. And I go too far away. I don't even know. I forgot what we're talking about. But anyway, it's I think diversity, you accept people, and that is important, because you learn something yourself. You are just you, but you don't know all these other people's and their stories. Just listen what they want to tell you, listen what they really need, not what you think what they need. Yeah, so
I think I liked what perhaps Raven would say a bit more about that notion of the village, because I think that for me is like, we started reading this American social worker Bertha Kaplan Reynolds, and she wrote these books and practiced a long time ago. Like, she died in 1978, but she wrote this book called Social Work and Social Living, and she worked for a time in this, like, in a union. It was the Maritime Union, and the social work actually operated like a club where people were part of the union, and so they were part of this club, and sometimes they needed help and they got help, and sometimes they were helping others, and it was like, and she was a social worker operating in this union, and it just, that's what it should be like, really, shouldn't it? And rather than the categories and the othering and the separate, and you're either a professional or you're a person with lived experience, with all the stigma that goes with it. But Raven, I was struck by that image of people walking alongside, and that's really nice.
Thank you. I think, Liz, similarly, in my second year of university, I was in a social work class, and it was essentially kind of ethics and how to conduct yourself. And the professor said to have a box of tissue out, but don't hand them the tissue because that's too much connectedness, essentially. And I remember being so angry at that. Um, how was I to be in a setting where people were sharing their most vulnerable moments with me and I couldn't hold them with compassion, the moments with compassion, and I couldn't meet them with grace and empathy and love? That feels backwards to social work. It lacks human. And I think I want to be in positions where I can show up human, and that their responses are met with those feelings, and they're received with love. And I think that comes back to being connected differently, sometimes outside of systems.
It's almost like I'm just thinking about the system of learning, but it could easily be a social service system or a child welfare, take your pick. It almost works, I think you said backwards, Raven, but against what I mean, I'm just thinking about the people who may be listening to this. Why this work? Why'd you pick this? And I suspect it's because in here, it's important to you to be with people. And I think sometimes that's the work, is to just be with people, not even to solve the problem or know the solution or know the problem, right? I think a lot about being told the expectation was to keep a sort of professional distance, Raven, but also to diagnose the problem as a stranger who's visiting for a brief chapter of someone's life. It seems like an odd role to take on. And so maybe the actual work sometimes is to just be alongside people, as you said. And what's that really about? And maybe it's about practicing being in relationship and practicing being human and practicing what it means to sit with someone during something really difficult. But also, I'm curious, I don't know why, Tim, but when I think about the relational activism work, I think about not just sitting beside people when they're in crisis, but sitting beside people when they're celebrating, right? Because there's that whole part of people's lives too. So I don't know if you want to say something about that, but that's just what came to mind when I was thinking about what Raven said.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, originally, Clarissa Stevens is another person with lived experience, also a person with significant professional experience, one of these nomads that have worked in different parts of social work and generated change. But she says that relational activism is just about caring. And I was going to swear then, 'cause she normally swears, and then I thought, I don't know, I had a moment of sort of like, but it's probably right to swear in it on the Kempe, but anyway. But yeah, and but when we were sort of thinking about how about change and activism, and there's a tradition in social work as well, isn't there, that goes back, stretches back a long time, I think, on both sides of the Atlantic, about how social workers are holding the cause of social change strongly and wearing their heart on their sleeve. And so putting those two words together, relational activism, felt like a natural thing as the part of some discussions that we were having some years ago. And there was some academics called O'Shaughnessy and Kennedy they started writing about it in the context of their environmental feminist writing. And what they said is they talked about the way that relationship building work contributes to conventional activism and constitutes activism in and of itself, which I think is what Raven yourself have been saying about, once you start doing things together, somebody was talking about togethering the other day, which I thought was nice, but once you start saying, okay, child protection conferences, people are telling us that they feel very, very, very difficult. Let's get a group of people together and ask them and find out what might help with that. And then a mix of parents and social workers say lived experience advocacy, and then you go on a process of peer research, of talking, developing services, sharing information about that, promoting that locally, trying to change the culture in your local cultures, in your services and system in inverted commas. Then you're starting to make things happen. And I mean, the title of the Kempe is always a call to action, isn't it? I think action and activism have probably got to be in the mix there somewhere if you're really going to change the culture. But it is fun. It's definitely fun. There's celebration along the way. And one of the ways that we started to think about that, and which did create ripples of change, was first of all, we were doing a lot of family good conferencing. And we were holding those family good conferences out in the community, which is still a really important part of trying to make decisions differently. But some of the parents that we started meeting with said that actually they wanted to come into the council spaces and they wanted to hold events. And we started holding this like signature event on Valentine's Day about love and social work. And that was fun. And it was like, there was heart-shaped confetti and music and all of that. And we did get into trouble with the buildings facilities management for that. But as part of, there was a hopeful disruption in it, which, didn't feel particularly like worthy, placard waving activism, but it was activism all the same, and it was a celebration. Yeah.
I think the late John Lewis would call that good trouble.
I love that. Good trouble.
Trouble.
Yeah.
I feel I'm just reacting to what you've said, Tim, and I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't maybe just say this aloud, that these pieces that we are focused on in how to do good work, which I think the five of us probably agree is centered always in relationships, dare I say always, is something that many cultures and communities have known and been practicing for a long time. And so what we are doing is just returning to remembering that. And I think, you kind of alluded to this, Tim, in the sort of that particular framework of relational activism, that the point is to get together because there are probably wise people in our families, our neighborhoods, our communities who've been through hard things before us. Right? This is not the first time in this family that something hard has happened, or this neighborhood that something difficult has happened. And so how do we learn from that? And I think a lot about you can look at, I can't even count how many Indigenous communities and cultures, or Black communities and cultures, or English or Irish communities and cultures, or beautiful Canadian cultures, have known that for hundreds of years. Thousands of years, maybe. And so it's a return to relationships as the center rather than an inventing of that idea.
Exactly. I think it's not new things. We just need to be human, remember while we innovative in many different things or how we do things, but sometimes you just need to going back to how it was, how it should be, more simple. Just be human. Just be care for people around you. I was earlier. I was go online on some social media. I went through this picture I saw about empathy, different level of empathy. So everyone has some level of empathy. So you listen to the person. Okay, I feel for you. Very minimal, but at the middle, yeah, you still, I hear you, what you say. I really feel for you. But the highest level of empathy is I feel for you, and I'm here to help you, to support you. And that's, I think, is where people need to be.
Might you give that example, the umbrella example that you give, Carmen?
Yes, in other places, I always use this example when doing parental advocacy. So my first parents I worked with, then so going through this hardship, and we came out from the family group conference, and then it was falling wings of that day, and she was going to pick up her children, and I walked with her together to go to pick up her children, and she doesn't have an umbrella, and it's all wet, soaked, but I have one tiny umbrella just for myself, but but you know what? I will share with you. We are sharing this umbrella together, and I will walk with you in this storm, in this situation. And I just tell her this is just like what me and her, the relationship, that working relationship. So actually, I walk alongside her, like Raven said before, that she walk alongside with the young people. So we will get through this storm, even though we have minimum of resources, this small tiny umbrella, but we will get through it together. And that's my role with her. And I think she is people said that she's very outspoken or a very loud woman. And at that moment, she would, you see it, she really softened, you see from her eyes. And I think she found that resonate, and she found that moment that we connect, and I think she would maybe appreciate that I was there. So, and we have good relationship, and at the end, her case was closed very within a short time, and I'm really pleased, and that she have made so much change in her life as well. Yeah, and we still keep contact, and she now she will attend the family group family advisory board that we are running. So, and she have the ambitions to want to do well and to support other people. Say we are going to have some training for our members to support some adult social work, social care, and she's waiting to train as an advocate to support other people. And so you see, when you show your empathy, your love to others, and they can feel it and they receive it, and they will also make good change. They listen to you, and then this experience, I don't say I'm role model, but I'm just one of the median. Yeah, I got this experience, and it helps me, then it might be help her. And see, this is like an ecosystem, you know. You just supporting, you like the disease, you spreading this out to infectious the others people. So it's really from what your intention. If your intention to do good, to support other people, these things will continue. But if your intention is not, I don't care, you're just one of the numbers, and there's no love, no relationship, and therefore you get what result? Very well, not really positive result, isn't it? People keep complaining and everything. But which path we're going? Which part we're going to this? You know, to love is to act is our value in relational activism. But last this month, our newsletter, I use one phrase from Paulo Coelho. He said, change by example, not your opinion. Yeah, go do it, not just talk. We talk a lot. We have so many people experience and evidence to say how good words should be look like, but just go do it. Yeah, just go
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
'Cause love is an action,
Yeah.
not just a word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Raven, I know we're gonna run out of time, but will you say something about, I don't know why, Carmen, when you were talking, I kept having the same thought over and over again, which is people rescue themselves in the context of their relationships. Social work doesn't do that. Systems don't do that. Child welfare protection doesn't do that. Right? People self-rescue in the context of community or relationship or love, as you said. And that always makes me think of Hero, Raven, and just what it's like for kids to, young people, depending on their age, kids, to be hanging out together and kind of, I don't know how to do this either, but we're going to be here together in the experience. I don't know if you see it that way, but that's what I think of always when I think about that kind of workshopping.
Yeah, I think with Hero specifically, after we have the youth come together, the youth, or when the youth have come together with their people, we have the youth who have done the process come together. It's the community connection. I see you. I've been through similarly. And I think that's empowering. That's allowing autonomy over self. That's allowing, let me change my trajectory and let me do it alongside with these people who have also been through similarly with me, and let me celebrate you as you celebrate me. And I think that's part of the remembering. We've done that for how many years, just being alongside of each other, witnessing kind of survival to thriving, and creating spaces where that is acceptable, and we're able to do so.
Yeah, I like that language, surviving to thriving. It's like, that's a catchy t-shirt for future need. Yeah, that's great. I'm just mindful of our time. I wonder if maybe we each just want to say something about, well, maybe just what we think of when we think of the word relationship. I have to say, specifically in the context of this conversation, the word that sort of lives alongside relationship for me is healing, not as a destination, just as a part of each of our lives as humans, as social workers, as neighbors, as teachers, as people in new jobs. That relationships are where we go to practice our healing and our growth and our joy and our sorrow or grief and all the things in between. I don't know. I'm returning to a really simple thought, but I'm very grateful to each of you for helping me return to it, which is relationships are about healing in here and with each other, which I think is kind of a simple thing, but we sometimes say in this work, like, it's not rocket science, right? Sometimes it's good to return to the simple stuff. So for me, that's what comes to mind is relationships are about healing and opportunities to be the author of your own healing in proximity with the people that you love, the people that you like, the people that you know, care about, see in passing when you get your coffee every morning, all different kinds of relationships, but they all contribute to healing for each of us.
The key takeaway for me from the conversation is this idea that you've brought through, the three of you, of that it's about restoring something or returning, rather than, I think if you're working in social work, social welfare or social work services, and you're trying to develop ideas around inclusion or participation, there's some of the words that we use in the UK, there is this feeling that it needs to be innovation, it needs to be something different. It's a stretch away from mainstream ideas, but that really gives me great heart in my new job, as you say, to feel that actually it's a return, and it's a return back to things. And if we can hold with that, there's a young person, well, he's adults aged out of care, called Michael Clark, who's a wonderful person, and he told me once that if you break down the word relationship, it's relation and a ship, like a ship on the ocean or a river. And so really, relationships, you can view them or look at them as a voyage of trust, perhaps, and maybe the best relationships move at the speed of trust. Yeah, and perhaps there isn't always a fixed destination either. The best ones maybe is where you sort of see where it goes and enjoy the ride together. Yeah.
Okay, Raven.
Yeah, Raven.
Thank you. I would say that I really value the idea of remembering, recognizing that we aren't the first to go through this, that there are people willing to walk alongside us, and then kind of receiving that, having someone walk alongside us, because I think in so many positions we're able to walk alongside others. So really valuing and remembering that we can have others walk alongside us is imperative, I think, to human connection and healing and just the village.
For me, yeah, like, so we, from this conversation, like Elizabeth said, we have this pattern, isn't it? Like going back to the basic. So me always reflect, and I think going back to the basics, to have a relationship with myself first, to understand myself first, what I want to do, what my goal is, and just also be myself and have the freedom, be myself. And once I have relationship with myself, and I will have better relationship with other people. So I'm reflecting on my life, that because I was lacking of this, and it drove me to all sorts of problems, because I don't know myself, and I just gone everywhere, you know. And to that path, it could be just like this if I know myself, but because I'm testing different paths, and then have so many different problems. And yeah, so first know myself, love myself, then I can do this to the others and do it good. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank our 4 panelists. This has been a really inspirational conversation. I'm just grateful for each one of you, for your contributions, for your words of wisdom, each unique, but a theme kind of was quite clear from this conversation of, again, 4 brilliant minds from around the world coming together to share all about relationships. So on behalf of everyone at Kempe and our conference team, I just want to thank each of you and for your contribution, not only to the event, but to how you work in service of others. So appreciate you, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Appreciate you too, Lisa.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.